allocations due to it shall be directly paid. That shall be directly into that particular account.
Now, the lawmakers, that's the federal lawmakers, equally voted to alter sections 4, 51, 68, 67, there's 93, and 109 of the 1999 Constitution. The purpose of which is to provide immunity for members of the legislature in respect of what's spoken or written at plenary sessions or at committee proceedings.
Now, going by developments on the floor of the two chambers, only 24 amendment bills out of the 33 considered will now be forwarded to state houses of assembly for at least two-thirds to ratify them, and the lawmakers could not agree on 9 of the amendment bills.
Now, amongst the bills that the lawmakers did not pass, that's to say now again at the federal level, are those that sought to give 35% affirmative action for women in terms of appointive officers. Now, the appointment also of a minister from the Federal Capital Territory, just as you have with each of the 36 states of the Federation, that of course also didn't scale through. The change of names of some local government councils, citizenship and citizenship bill, referring in particular to where a married woman would opt to choose, either by way of birth, directly from her birth, or by marriage. Now, also the aspect relating to the national security agencies to be excised from the Constitution, as well as separation of the office of the Attorney General of the Federation from that of the Minister of Justice, or at the state level, Commissioner for Justice, as well as the Attorney General of the respective. But these were some of the bills that failed, as it were.
You could just use that word.
Goes, they fell through at the National Assembly.
You're quite right, Kingsley. By most measures, an amendment to the Constitution is considered an equivalent task, because while the House and the Senate will have to agree on every section of the Constitution listed for amendments, each of the amendments that both houses agree to, or both chambers will agree to, will then be forwarded to 36 states for ratification.
And Blessing, as you indicated earlier, the law also stipulates, the Constitution itself stipulates that two-thirds of the state House of Assembly, that is 24 of them, will have to agree on each of the respective amendments before, of course, the returns are now made to the federal capital, that's to say Abuja, where the clerk of the National Assembly will then forward the concurrence or rejections for the president's assent. Of course, it is those that meet the threshold of concurrence that are then forwarded to the president for his assent. The president, of course, can withhold his assent.
Sure. Now, for those of us who are actually looking, okay, why this amendment here and there, why this particular one, or what not, or what are those things that are still left out? The questions will be, is the Nigerian Constitution defective? Or is the amendment of the Constitution the solution to the nation's social, economic, as well as political problems? To what extent are the operators of the Constitution, as well as the people, the problem? And the proposed amendment truly, will they ensure unity as well as the development of Nigeria?
All right, pertinent questions, and I'm sure the heat that was generated last week with regard to restructuring, deriving essentially from the devolution of powers to the states. In other words, some persons had expected that some of the items on the exclusive legislative list in the second schedule to the Constitution would have been moved to the concurrent list, whereby states will now have greater authority to legislate on some matters, and which will also come with greater and better funding for the states.
Like you said, reactions that's pouring in even from...
absolutely. So these are the issues our guests, will seek to provide answers to any discussion segments on Good Morning Nigeria today. Reaching you, as always, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA. We're Africa's largest TV network, and we are right here at the Abuja headquarters studios. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I welcome you to today's edition of the program.
No, my name is Blessing Abu. I also join Kingsley in welcoming you to today's edition, which is the first for the working week. And this is coming to you live on the network service, like you've heard. And in the course of the program, we'll bring to you a companion segment that is alongside the discussion, taking a look at the constitutional amendments this time around. Newspaper review will be there, business, sports, foreign, as well as entertainment news. But right now, here's the main news for the day. Acting President Yemi Osinbajo has condemned the appalling ambush, attack and abduction of soldiers and civilians who were carrying out their duties to the nation in the Lake Chad frontier exploration. Professor Osinbajo commiserates with the families, relatives, as well as associates of those who lost their lives in the despicable onslaught and wishes the injured speedy recovery. While commending the military for the progress already recorded with the rescue of some of the abducted, Professor Osinbajo also orders the continuation of search and rescue mission to locate and ensure the freedom of all remaining abducted persons as soon as possible, using all available and expedient means in the circumstances. Acting President Osinbajo says tribute to the resilience, courage and bravery of officers and men of the Nigerian Armed Forces for the gallant endeavors and sacrifice for the peace, security and territorial integrity of the country. He also commends the diligence of the management and staff of the NNPC and the lecturers as well as consultants from the University of Maiduguri in pursuing federal government's resolve to grow our country's current crude oil reserve base through potential exploration in the Lake Chad Basin, stressing that the government will by no means be dissuaded. The acting president said the objective of the patriotic exercise is to open up new areas for oil exploration for the common good of all Nigerians. Meanwhile, the Nigerian army says it remains resolute in the fight against terrorism and would not relent in its effort to safeguard lives of citizens, property, and the territorial integrity of the country. This was made known in a statement issued by Director Army Public Relations, Brigadier General Sani Kuka Sheikha Usman, on the situation on the ambush of troops, including members of the Civilian Joint Task Force, staff of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, and that of University of Maiduguri by Boko Haram terrorists while on oil exploration in Borno Yesu, district of Magumeri local government area of Borno State. He described as unfortunate and regrettable earlier statements issued that all NNPC staff were rescued. The error in the statement was not deliberate. The Nigerian Army condoles with the families of all those who lost their loved ones and count on the goodwill and support of the populace in volunteering available information that could help in the search and rescue operation. Chairman of the Northern Governors Forum and Governor of Borno State, Kashim Shettima, says there is no need for worry about the declaration of some northern youth asking a particular group of Nigerians to vacate the north. Governor Shettima made this known to newsmen shortly after meeting with leadership of the coalition of northern youth at the Borno State's Governor's Lodge in Abuja.
We have come to a common understanding on the challenges confronting us as a people, because a political problem needs a political solution. Criminalizing them, harassing them, intimidating them will not find solutions to our challenges. They hold us in the highest esteem. They have agreed to review their decision. We'll follow it up to its logical conclusion. And inshallah, in the next couple of days, we are going to get good news from them.
FCT Minister Alhaji Mohammed Musa Bello has reminded officials of Nigerian Muslim pilgrims to this year's Hajj of the religious and government's body on them to conduct the affairs of the pilgrims with the fear of Allah. The minister stated this when he represented the acting president, Yemi Osinbajo, at the flag-off of airlift to this year's Hajj at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja. Minister of State Aviation and Foreign Affairs, Hadi Sirika and Khadija Bukar Abba Ibrahim, and the Emir of Bauchi, who represented Sultan Muhammad Sahad Abubakar, admonished the pilgrims to know that they are on a religious journey and must not do anything that is un-Islamic during the pilgrimage. Chairman of the National Hajj Commission of Nigeria, Abdullahi Mutalab, said that staff of the commission have been directed to ensure the welfare of pilgrims while in the Holy Land. Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, SAN, has enjoined the public to give hope to victims of human trafficking by reporting any known case. The minister, who said this at a seminar held in Abuja to commemorate the 2017 International Day Against Trafficking in Persons, noted that this will ensure that perpetrators of the crime are prosecuted.
As well as human trafficking are two vices that are being considered with all the seriousness they deserve in terms of enhancement of legislations, in terms of enforcement and sanctions.
It is an international problem. So I would like us to lend our voice to this so that the Europeans can begin to prosecute the collaborators, the European collaborators that are conspiring with the Nigerian traffickers.
The presidency says it will continue to encourage young people with viable ideas, including those who apply the gift and talent to promote the unity of the nation. Spokesperson to the acting president, Laolu Akonde, stated this when he received a Nigerian international classic artist based in the United States, Abiodun Koya.
Like the acting president has said over and over again, and the president, actually, it's important for us to continue to project, the unity of this country, that we are better when we are together. Yes. The strength of Nigeria is in its diversity. That is why, our office is supporting your project.
That's the news bit for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues just after this break.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Many Nigerian children cannot afford to go to school because they live in poverty. Instead of enjoying education and its benefits, they get involved in street trading to help themselves and their families survive. The Rochers Foundation is a humanitarian organization which currently caters for over 15,000 less privileged children in various schools all over Nigeria. The foundation has a goal to take thousands of less privileged children off the streets and provide them with free quality education from secondary school to the university as part of her Vision 2030. Admission forms are free and available online and at all Rochers Foundation colleges at Owerri, Jos, Ibadan, Kano, Enugu, Sokoto, Yola, Bauchi, Zaria and Oboko. For further details, visit www.rochersfoundation.org. Rochers Foundation, we educate to empower.
All right, you're welcome back. If you just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria, still on the network service of the NTA. Now it's time for us to take our business stories. And here's our correspondent, Amina Nujem, who tells us about the Africa Development Bank, as well as the Directorate of Technical Cooperation in Africa, which are both set to further growth and development on the continent.
Hello and welcome. The Directorate of the Technical Cooperation in Africa of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Africa Development Bank are to announce the completion of the first life cycle of Nigeria Technical Cooperation Fund. The $25 million fund was established as a grant facility for development projects and programs, with a view to contributing to the socio-economic and technological development of regional member countries and to promote regional cooperation and economic integration in Africa. Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Khadija Bukar Abba Ibrahim, is expected to sign the agreement on behalf of the federal government on Tuesday, the 1st of August, 2017. The public discourse in economic circles on Nigeria beyond oil says it is not canvassing for a total break away from oil in Nigeria's quest to diversify her economy. Rather, it is advocating the need to look inwards within the petroleum sector and break away from only crude oil production, but to focus attention on other petroleum byproducts. The energy experts say their opinion is coming from the background that countries purchasing crude from Nigeria are already exploring alternative energy sources such as solar, wind and coal energy. They observe that when they make record breakthroughs in these areas, Nigeria's crude oil will become unattractive to them.
Part of the plan ahead we should do is to recognize that we have crude, but we also need to develop technologies in line with the crude we have. Instead of exporting crude, we should begin to look at domestic technologies for putting our crude into like petrochemical industries, coming up with resins and using some of these derivatives to further develop other technologies within the country. These are possibilities. Then, of course, we need to begin to look at new areas like ICT, especially in this age in time where you have a lot of youth taking over.
The federal government has commenced investigation into the circumstance that led to the illegal importation of 3 consignments containing 140 species of snakes and 660 other animals into the country from Cameroon. Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Audu Ogbe, says that the Nigerian Agricultural Quarantine Services has been directed to commence the investigation immediately.
We must develop zero tolerance for transportation of substandard produce within and out of the country by land, air or sea.
We now take a quick look at closing figures from the Nigerian Stock Exchange. And that's it on Business News. I am Amina Nujain. Good Morning Nigeria continues.
Thank you very much, Amina Najim, for the business report. Up next on Good Morning Nigeria is a newspaper review.
Bayo Atoyobi, our newspaper reviewer, is right here with us in the studios for today's edition. Bayo, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Kinsley. How was your weekend?
Pretty good.
Morning, Blessing.
Okay.
Good morning, Bayo.
Good morning, Nigeria.
I hope you enjoyed your weekend too. All right, let's begin by taking a look at the front page of the Independent newspaper, which is the first paper that we are taking a look at. The lead story for the Independent paper has a double-decker headline. It says, APC crisis, thugs attack reps, senators and journalists in Kaduna, with 2 riders, Shehu Sani, fingers El-Rufai, and Governor orders investigation. Details of the story can be found inside. Now, also just immediately below that, you have another headline, Lagos-Ibadan Rail Project. Southwest senators guilty of treason. This is attributed to Afenifere. Of course, that's hyperbolic. And then state speakers endorse local government independence and assemblies financial autonomy. State speakers endorse local government independence and assemblies financial autonomy. Also there on the front page, Boko Haram won't stop exploration of oil in Lake Chad. That's according to Acting President Oshibajo. And Army apologizes for false claims on rescue of oil experts and recovers additional 21 bodies. Now, at the foot of the front page there, right there at the bottom, it says, Northern youths set to withdraw quit notice on Igbos. That can be found on page A9 inside. Now, back again to the top, just below the nameplate of the paper, it says, how President says budget row with National Assembly stored environment consideration. The story is in greater detail inside. And then above the nameplate, again, Lagos and Abuja airports certification suffers setback. Listen.
All right, for the Nigerian pilots, is leading with the story of the crisis in, like you read in the paper, over Kaduna issue. Sani El-Rufai field gets messier. Sani, of course, is Senator Shehu Sani, and El-Rufai is governor of Kaduna State. With the rider, senators, journalists attacked in Kaduna. That is the leading headline for the Nigerian pilot. But just above that, you have the two stories. Why North is afraid of restructuring. Masari is Alhaji Bello Masari, is the governor of Katsina State. Boko Haram attacks can't dissuade federal government. This coming from acting president Yemi Osinbajo as he orders search rescue mission for seized NNPC and University of Maiduguri officials. That story or both stories are trending on page 2. Just below the photograph you have there, you have ex-governors alleged corruption cases. AGF, as the Attorney General of Federation, may sanction Magu and Inter. That story you find on page 5. And still on page 5, you find this raft of stories just below that caption. Resident doctors to commence strike in 21 days. Restructuring, Ben Murray Bruce blast Yakasai over comment against Atiku. Breastfeeding doesn't make breast sag, well, that's on the light side. And criticism can't deter me from service to Nigeria. This is coming from Senate President Bukola Saraki. Quickly now to the New Telegraph. Above the nameplates for the New Telegraph, you have the story. Oil workers threaten strike over anti-labor activities. You'll find the story starting there but continues on page 7. And below the nameplate for the New Telegraph are these other stories. Wike, that's the governor of River State, and Amechi, that's Rotimi Amechi, Minister of Transportation, in verbal war over alleged forged documents. That's what you find on page 7. Quit notice. Arewa youth will recant this week. This is coming from Governor Shetima. Bado resurfaces, kills 2 daughters, and of course their parent, that's couple. That's what you find on page 9. Don't write off Buhari in 2019 polls. That is coming from the APC chair himself, John Odigoyego. Ministers panic as Oshibajo mauls cabinet shake-up. That is the leading headline for the New Telegraph. With 2 riders, presidency, non-performing ministers to go. And Fashola, Adeosun, Malami, Adamu may retain portfolios. All the details you find on page 2 of the New Telegraph. And for the Lagos students that were kidnapped and were released over the weekend or last week, Lagos students kidnapped. Our children behaving strangely. This is coming from the parents. Pupils return to hospital, and victims saying our captors taught us to pray. You'll find more details on page 8. Ayo.
Yes, so many stories now. Let's start with the order given by the acting president that the armed forces must search and rescue the oil exploration workers that were abducted in the course of their duty. He has commiserated with the families of those who were killed, and he says the oil exploration in the Chad Basin will continue. Therefore, Boko Haram cannot stop the activities of government as it is. Meanwhile, the president of the Academic Staff Union, Oguyemi, has said that they are threatened to call out all their workers if their colleagues that were abducted are not freed. The Vice Chancellor, University of Maiduguri, Professor Ibrahim Jodi, has indicated that 4 of his staff are still to be accounted for. Over the weekend, the insurgent group had paraded 3 of the university staff, and they were calling that the demands of the insurgents should be met and there should be no attempt using force to make their rescue. Meanwhile, the United Nations, the African Union, and the ECOWAS have all jointly condemned and deplored Boko Haram terrorists for killing oil exploration workers and abducting some of them in the course of the oil exploration in Lake Chad Basin. The regional, continental, and world body reiterated their support to the people and government of Nigeria. They commiserated with the families of those that were lost, and they asserted that they support Nigeria government in the struggle against terrorism. They reminded the government and enjoined it to follow up on the ECOWAS strategy against terrorism and enforce all they can to ensure that terrorism is needed in the board in the region. They have also condoled members of the families of those that were bereaved. There are conflicting reports about killings in Lagos again, particularly in Ikorodu area, attributed to Badu cult. The police say instances of what they have seen depart from the activities of the Badu, and therefore they are investigating what they suspect to be murder. This involved the death of a couple and 2 of their children. The 3rd child, who was critically ill, unfortunately was also lost while in hospital. Meanwhile, the 6 kidnapped students, after 65 days, were released over the weekend. The students were handed over to their parents by the Deputy Governor of Lagos State, Dr. Idiat Adebule. And when he handed over them to the parents, the boys narrated their experience. They said they were left in the elements and they suffered. Many of them fell ill, but as time went on, they were moved from place to place. They were reported to have been dumped at a creek in Ondo. There are conflicting reports. Papers are reporting that ransom were paid. The Commissioner of Police Lagos, Owusheni, says that no ransom were paid. And Blessing, you were reporting that the children are being reported to be manifesting strange behaviors.
Exactly. That's it's reported on the front page.
Yeah, that's why I think they need to still undergo further psychological tests and also rehabilitation, because having been away for 65 days, naturally, their behavior will be a little strange.
Especially in a company of strange people who
Yes.
are exhibiting other strange behaviors as well.
And just strange people, violent human beings.
Violent.
Anyway. Violent, and that's this is perhaps one of the more difficult phases that they're just getting into now, because
Yes.
the trauma that they have suffered is one, as you indicated, will require a great deal of counseling, and we do hope that the proper psychologists, of course, will be recruited for this purpose. But just it's a happy ending, as it were. I mean, we've seen, according to the stories, what happened. You had the federal government, the police, the governments of Lagos and Ondo State,
yes.
and at some point, I think Bayelsa also all getting involved to ensure the rescue of the children. But one of the most surprising things, at first glance, when I saw the photographs of the children, looking at the jerseys they were wearing, I thought they were young footballers, by the way, without having a clear indication of their identity. And I think the kidnappers had, given them
some apparel to change into.
advertising, foreign companies as well as foreign clubs. It's a bit traumatic. I mean, not a bit. It was quite traumatic, but it's a happy ending that all is well as it is now. Well, let's return to the papers. There's a story that you can immediately see that on the front page. I'll just take that very quickly. It's on page B7 of the Independent, and it relates to the arrests by the Standards Organization of Nigeria of Pakistani nationals over fake products. This took place in the Apapa area of Lagos. They were faking imported fruit juice, at a warehouse located somewhere on Bama Road. The story is on page B7. And these are Pakistanis. Now let's take a look at the front page of Daily Trust newspaper. Daily Trust newspaper, from top to bottom straight away, it says, disquiet in FCT company over salary fraud and whistleblower sack. That's on page 3. The story we also read earlier about thugs attack senators and journalists in Kaduna. That's on page 4. Debt and Forex threatened $68 billion telecoms investments. That's on page 15. Now, the lead story for the paper says, with a kicker, Boko Haram, Oshibajo meets service chiefs again. Then, of course, you have a photograph of the children there. It's saying displaced women and children from Guza and Bama being tested for hepatitis at their camp in Abuja on World Hepatitis Day at the weekend. Yeah, listen.
Yes, so I've already taken most of the stories I have here. Well, but maybe I might need to react to some of those one. Ministers panic as Oshibajo Mall's cabinet shake-up is the leading one for the New Telegraph, and also the oil workers threatening to go on a strike over anti-labor activity.
Well, that's part of all in the ambit of speculation. Already they have speculated when the 2 ministers were sworn in, portfolio had not been assigned, and again, they are speculating that it is pending a possible cabinet reshuffle. Nobody is sure what is there in the offer. Again, there are high expectations that any time from now, Mr. President will return to his seat, and this will now end all this speculation. Meanwhile, the development in Kaduna is very worrying, because there was a congress of the All Progressive Congress that was going on to select delegates for a non-elective convention that it was expected. Now, some of the delegates felt aggrieved about what went on. Senators Shehu Sani and Hunkwi had convened a press conference at the NUJ Center in Kaduna, and while they were there, hoodlums, thugs, call them whatever, had invaded the place and beat up everybody. The Nigerian Union of Journalists have put out a statement condemning that it will not accept the threat of freedom of expression. Expectedly, Kaduna State government had also put out a pronouncement condemning the attack on the NUJ and assuring that they are there to guarantee press freedom. They have also called on security agencies to fish out the hoodlums that are behind that. But the point to note here is that this is an increasing development. And if you go back to the politics of 1979, it is reminiscent of what happened during the era of the People's PRP, where you had in Kaduna and Kano, you had a division within the party. And this is the pattern we are beginning to see. There's this restlessness in Kano within the party there that is in power. And the same thing is manifesting in Kaduna. So history, stubborn as it is, may have the tendency to repeat itself.
It always do.
Yeah, well, it always does. But it's been cat and mouse between the Senator Shehu Sani and Governor El-Rufai. Well, they sort themselves out. But one very critical point, Bayo, is the obvious lesson in public information management as well as in public relations. The Nigerian Army, coming out to apologize for the information that it had given out earlier with regard to the rescue of oil workers, of some of the oil workers who were attacked by Boko Haram elements. We also recall what happened in 2014, immediately on the heels of the abduction of the Chibok girls. Yes. There was also that initial information that came out. Just the clearing, house clearing processes that they normally will undergo. It's not something to mock them about, because I mean, this is a theater of war, and they don't normally get all the information.
In instances of emergency, information becomes very difficult to get. If you recall, during the 9/11 attack, the immediate information that came about casualty was 10,000.
That's right.
And it was exaggerated until later on, when everything settled down, it came down as low as 3,000 persons. 3,000, of course, is a very high casualty, but compared to the 10,000 that was speculated in the initial case. And in this instance, you recall that even on Good Morning Nigeria, we were excited and said, thank God they were rescued.
Absolutely.
And immediately they were not rescued. They gave an update, and the death toll, unfortunately, now is about 48.
If you also recall 9/11, when it first happened, the initial impression was that an aircraft had missed its flight path from JFK and slammed into the World Trade Center. Baya Toby, that's the much that we can take on the newspaper review segment today. I'd like to thank you for being with us. See you tomorrow.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's see Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll get into our discussion segment.
Boy, try this thing now. Not be only to connect lights. Come do on yourself now. Now wow. Boy, calm down now. Oga Kasali electrician, who would they look for with this? Oga Kasali, come help us fix this wire now.
Sorry, I no longer carry out illegal connection. It puts the lives of people at risk and can cause fire outbreak and disrupt power supply. I will never be part of anything that has to do with this any longer, because change begins with me.
Oh boy, letting him talk makes sense. Oh boy, no could carry this ladder from over.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Wow! August meeting is here again. Imolites, get ready for an awesome time as Her Excellency Ugo Noma Nkechirocha Zukorocha, PhD, welcomes women from all walks of life to Imo for August meeting 2017 with a theme, Women, Building Bridges of Friendship Across the Niger. So, on the 3rd of August 2017, Imo will be on the center stage as Hero Square will be agog with thousands of Imolites and Nigerians to welcome the special guest of honor and mother of the day, Her Excellency Hajia Aisha Buhari, wife of the President, Federal Republic of Nigeria. Time 9 a.m. Convener, Her Excellency Ugo Norma Nkechirocha Zukorocha, PhD. Chief host, His Excellency Owele Anayorocha Zukorocha, the Executive Governor of Imo State. 2017 August meeting. Come, let's promote peaceful coexistence, very strength and unity.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria now. To kickstart our discussion, let's take this report put together by Oyeyemi Ajayi.
The Constitution is the ground norm that guides all activities, including governance, in any democratic dispensation. Like in other climes, Nigerian Constitution, tagged 1999 Constitution, provides direction on how the country should be governed in line with democratic tenets. But since Nigeria's return to democracy in 1999, there has been clamor for the review of the Constitution on the grounds that it does not truly reflect the views of Nigerians as contained in its opening statement. With the development in the political scene, it becomes imperative for the Constitution to be amended in line with the present realities. This perhaps necessitated the need for the National Assembly to commence the process. Attempts were made by the 7th National Assembly to tinker with the Constitution, but to no avail. Determined to ensure the success of the exercise, the 8th National Assembly made it one of its legislative agenda and thereafter constituted a joint committee to undertake the review. On conclusion of its assignment, the committee submitted its report to the two chambers of the National Assembly.
Register now. Get ready to vote. Vote now.
33 bills were voted upon by the federal legislators, and out of which 24 bills were passed. However, 9 of them couldn't scale through. These include the bills on devolution of power, state creation and boundary adjustment, as well as the 35 affirmative action for women. The proposed amendments include the Not Too Young to Run bill, which now opens the window for youths to participate in politics, independent candidature, change of the name of the Nigerian police force, autonomy of local governments and that of state legislators.
This is an exercise that we gave a promise and we have kept to it. We are definitely making history in the exercise that we have carried out, not only in the timing of it, but the content.
These proposed amendments have generated public discourse. The question now is, will the amendments scale through in the various state legislatures, or will it go the way of the last efforts? And will this end the agitations by various interest groups?
All right, thank you very much, Oyeyemi Ajayi, for that background report. We have guests with us here in the studios, and then also from 2 of our network centers. First, we would like to, at this time, welcome the Senior Special Assistant to the President of National Assembly Matters, Senate. That's distinguished Senator Ita Enang. Senator Ita Enang, a pleasure to have you join us on the program this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians.
Okay. And then we also have with us here in the studios Senator Kairat Gwadabe. She's the Chairperson Forum of Senators. She's joining us in this conversation. Distinguished Senator, a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
Okay. Blessing.
All right, Kingsley, thank you very much. We have other guests joining us, but this time around outside Abuja studio, we would like to welcome from our Port Harcourt Network Center, Festus Oguche, a constitutional lawyer. Mr. Oguche, thank you for joining us on the program this morning. And from our Ibadan Network Center is a political scientist and journalist, Roti Agility. Mr. Agility, thank you for joining us on the program as well. All right, Kingsley, I think we'll start off from here.
Yes, let's begin the conversation. You know, obviously, with distinguished Senator Ita Enang, you're wearing 2 hats, as it were. You've been in the Senate. You've, of course, been involved in lawmaking, and then you are working on behalf of the executive branch. There are matters, of course, that could still come up to the executive. But let's deal with what we have seen emerge from the National Assembly last week with regard to the attempt now. This will be the attempt, the 4th alteration attempt, the one of 2015, of course, didn't quite pan out. From your perspective, exactly what are we seeing play out here? Is this in consonance with the wishes of the people? Or are the lawmakers, you know, acting, as some persons might say, on their own, without due regard to the wishes of the people. So considering, the totality of the bills, what are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are that Nigerians should appreciate the effort that has been made as at this moment. I'm not getting into the substance of what has been asked on each of them, but I'm just appreciating some part of the process. First, the voting was done very transparently. Second, the matter was put live for Nigerians to watch by the Nigerian Television Authority, and we observed that you normally give them up to some minutes to one, but you gave each day each of the chambers at the House of Representatives, you gave them full time until it. So I also extend the thanks to you. The other one is that whether Nigerians are satisfied or whether the process was, whether Nigerians participated. Yes, Nigerians participated to a certain extent, because I want to say that I participated in the attempt in 2007 to amend when I was in the House of Representatives. We participated again in the attempt in 2011, and then the attempt in 2015. This is the fourth attempt. The only thing that is different in this one, which is not quite appreciated, is that Nigerians did not, that is the legislators, first did not debate some of the bills before they went, particularly sometimes in the Senate, sometimes in the House. They did not debate it. And the senators and most constituents did not take the steps that we took in 2014, 2015. Each of us as senators had to go to our different states, our different senatorial districts first. Then we called our representative. How do you think? How do I vote on this subject? How do I vote on this subject? How do you want me to vote on this subject? That happened. And after that, each of the senators, or 3 of the senators in each state, had to go to call a meeting of all the senators and all the entire state to consider. And then there were some that we were told vote, and the other one. At the end of it, we took to the zones. Each of the senators and all the states and the members of the House of Representatives joined in all the and went to the zones, and they voted. So that was what happened. Now, at the end of it, we all came back and we voted nearly what we were each asked to vote. But it does appear that the mistake or some understanding that some people made was that this exercise was a continuation of the former exercise, because most of the matters voted on now were matters which were voted on. Some passed, some failed by the 7th Assembly. It went to the State House of Assembly. Some passed, some failed, and then it was transmitted back to the National Assembly, and then it was collected, firmed up, and then forwarded to the Mr. President for assent. But by some acts of the then Attorney General, Adoke SAN, I think they took us to court in invoking the Supreme Court Additional Jurisdiction Act, and then it didn't work out, and it ended that assembly stood dissolved without that matter passing. And so this is a new exercise which but let me just generally appreciate the exercise as done.
All right, Senator Itayanan, thank you very much. Senator Karagodabe, let's get your own thoughts on the process that we saw last week by both the Senate and the House of Representatives in passing their amendments through a number of bills to the 1999 Constitution as already previously amended.
Well, I have mixed feelings about the process itself. Like Senator Itayanan had said, the past procedures that we had used I was part of the first one in 1999, yes. And that was a very ambitious effort to look at the entire process. By the fourth assembly, by the fourth session of the assembly in 2007, they had changed the system a bit. The same, they were moving away from holistic look at the Constitution. But still, Nigerians don't feel part of the process. And this time round, they've short-changed Nigerians. That is my own opinion. They have tended to frog lip with what had already been decided by a previous parliament, and they're moving it forward on that. One thing they did that is interesting was they had a retreat on all the sections to find out, to get a consensus and a feel for between themselves. But unfortunately, if you do not engage Nigerians through the process, one, they misunderstand what you're presenting, and two, we feel that the process, there's a question mark in the process. For instance, on the decision taken on the 35% on the women, if they had engaged, many people didn't even know that there was a constitutional process going on. Otherwise, they would have engaged the National Assembly with their lobbying to ensure their voices are represented. So the mere fact that they took a shortcut to ensure this change. I don't support a shortcut because the Constitution is for all of us. And if our voices are to be represented, and being the ground norm, it is something that we should all be involved. It's the same criticism that we had of the 1999 Constitution that you hear, that they say, we the people. That phrase, we the people give unto ourselves. Now, we the people don't feel we're part of this process of the alteration at this stage. However, after all said, there are some salient issues that they've been able to push forth, but we would have liked to see a better grassroots involvement of the Nigerian people in the process. Right. Thank you very much, Senator Gwadebe. Now let's get back to Port Harcourt, where we earlier introduced constitutional lawyer Festus Oguche. Yes, the two guests that have spoken here have raised different issues, but I'm sure we want to take a look at, say, constitution is formulated by the people or their delegates, but this present exercise already is debatable itself. How much of the ownership of the Nigerian persons or the Nigerians is involved in this, and what's your reaction?
Well, constitution making process is quite an onerous one, and we're still at the learning stage. But the truth of the matter is that any iota of constitutional amendment or constitutional making must involve the people. It's a document that must express the will and interest of the people. It represents their future goals and aspirations, their existence, and the very essence of their being. Being that so, I think it is proper that constitutional making must accord with the will of the people. And that is what confers it with some shade of legitimacy. When legitimacy is lacking in any constitution, it's as good as not a constitution. And that is the very point we're making right from 1979, when we had impositions of constitutional documents and affirming in the preamble that we, the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, blah, blah, blah. It has been the same song that, look, we have to confer some shade of legitimacy on these instruments by involving the people, by ensuring and guaranteeing their participation in the constitutional making process or in the amendment process. I believe that the recent exercise is a very bold one. The National Assembly have done very well. They have been courageous enough to even veer into areas that have been left in abeyance. But as far as I'm concerned, the alienation is very palpable, alienation of the people. And that is why we are talking that this constitutional instrument that we call the 1999 Constitution as amended is not something that should be a matter subject of review. I think a new process has to be put on ground to ensure that the people's constitution enthrones and the will of the people determines the instruments and the objectives and fundamental principles of government. That is very, very important. And I believe also that anything that is worth doing is worth doing well. And that is why some of these agitations here and there keep cropping up, because we have not actually done the right thing. You could come by way of consultation, you can come by way of conference, whether sovereign or not sovereign or whatever. But when it comes to issues of fundamental amendments of the Constitution, the people must always be consulted, and that's my take.
All right, Festus Oguche, thank you very much again. We'll we'll come back to you in the course of the conversation. And for us to go to our Ibadan Network studios, where we earlier introduced political scientist and journalist Ronti Agility. Mr. Agility, let's get your own perspective on all of this in terms of process and procedure and involvement. I mean, you've listened to the other three guests, who are with us in the studios, what they've talked about, as well as our Port Harcourt Network Center. Festus Oguche putting it starkly that there's palpable alienation of the people from the process that we saw last week in the National Assembly. What's your take?
Well, unfortunately, I've been cut off since the beginning of the program because the studio has not been able to link me up. But if I get the last sentence, you're asking about the procedure taken by the Senate and the House of Representatives. There is a constitutional provision under which the Constitution can be amended. We all know that. But whether they have fulfilled that, that is supposed to be the first aspect. After this, then they now go further. If you look at the relevant sections of the Constitution, it says that when the Senate, by 2/3 majority, decides that a portion should be amended, yes. The same thing with the House of Representatives. So the joint session of the National Assembly make a 2/3. But that's not the end of it. It has to go to the state assemblies. We have 36 states, and it has to be a 2/3 of that 36 states. That's the state assemblies. Now, my take is that we now have about 23 or 24 proposals to amend the Constitution. Well, to me, I will not say that that is not an amendment, because what that simply means that we are rewriting the Constitution. The obvious thing we should do in these circumstances is that we should now look at it, whether we should rewrite the Constitution rather than amending 23, 24, 25 proposals. That is too much. Then secondly, sir, I'm saying that even the amendment they are talking about, the Constitution, has it been tested? It is only such area that has been tested that I would say is due for amendment. Take, for instance, the issue of representation, like saying that we should give 35% to the women in political representation. Such was nearly tested by the Federal High Court about 2 weeks ago, when a lawyer went to the court, Agbakoba, SAN, saying that it is discriminatory. And the court has now ruled that that aspect will be discriminatory. Then why should the National Assembly now amend that? So that is my own short view. I didn't hear you from the beginning, but I believe I have not talked off the course. I didn't hear the discussion.
All right, Mr. Agility, thank you very much. We'll come back to you later on, but just to indicate, of course, that we have another guest whom we had not earlier introduced. Of course, he is distinguished Senator Aliu Sabi Abdullahi. He is the chair of the Senate Committee on Media and Public Affairs, because he appears on Good Morning Nigeria from time to time. Distinguished Senator Sabi Abdullahi, a pleasure to have you join us on the program this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, you've had the benefit of listening to the tailpiece of what Senator Itai Nang said, or distinguished Senator Gwanabe, as well as Festus Oguche, who is with us in the Abuja studio, in the Port Harcourt studios, and now from Ibadan. One point to first clarify, because again, for the benefit of our viewers, because the story was out there in the past that, look, the fiasco of the 2015 attempt at amending the Constitution gave rise to the segregation of this process of having a number of bills, so that if one bill fails, then of course the entire process doesn't quite, doesn't then fall through as well. But you've had the issues raised that there appears to have been insufficient involvement of the people. In other words, the lawmakers did not appear to have returned to their constituents to get their consent on what to vote on, how to vote on each of those items. Again, Oguche says palpable alienation.
Well, thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
I think the conversation is very interesting, and in fact, I have been smiling since, because when it comes to the issue of the legislator, sometimes you really don't even know where to place the interests of Nigerians. At one breath, they claim we're too expensive. At another breath, they claim we are not sufficiently consulting. But I think the most important point we must put in, straight is that democratic processes are never cheap. Because the question I do ask is, what is the cost of freedom? And I think if you look at the fact that it is only in a democracy that so many freedoms are guaranteed, then I think it behoves on all of us to begin to appreciate that the processes of engagement, of inclusiveness and participation are never processes that can be one-off, neither are they processes that when one event happens, it gives a death knell on the issues. Be that as it may, let me say that the 8th Senate clearly had an objective. And one of the objectives fundamentally to me is that we have told ourselves all the previous assemblies have done quite tremendous efforts at deepening our democracy and doing things to ensure that good governance prevails. Now, all the lessons from what they have done, where they have succeeded, what are the critical success factors, where they have failed, why did they have to fail? We took all of those things in contention. That is the first point. The second point is, when we came on board with the issue of the constitutional review, when we unveiled our legislative agenda at the beginning, and we said we are going to give constitutional amendment a very top priority, a number of Nigerians, and indeed the media, was awash with the fact that the last exercise was stupendously expensive. That was the claim, that a lot of money was spent and at the end of the day, it was thrown off. We took that into contention also and said, look, we don't have to repeat certain things that are extremely clear, because that process that was thrown off went the whole hog. There was zonal consultations all over, and after that, it went back to the state houses of assembly. The state houses of assembly also have their own processes of engaging their stakeholders at their state level. Having done all of those things, and certain things were settled, all those issues that were settled, vis-a-vis the new developments that we have seen as a result of the dynamics of our existence, of course, let us now bring a synthesis of all the issues that we think are very important, and that was what this particular effort did. And the other lesson is that you don't start it late, start it early. And so the committee on the constitutional amendment started work late 2015. Now, the point I want to make here is this. Yes, people will say there are palpable, alienation. But the question still remains. The process has not even ended. In fact, the most critical period now, for me, is what will happen at the state level. Because at this stage, yes, what we have done so far is to give concurrence among the two chambers to issues that we believe are unambiguous, and they are very clear. And you can see those ones receive an overwhelming a vote from members. And yes, we would have loved to have more consultation. But the question remains, the funding, the timing, and other issues. And so, for me, it's a learning process. We can never stop learning if truly we want to succeed. But I think to say that we have not done what we feel is right, I think is something that can continuously be debated. But be that as it may, as far as I'm concerned, the key issues that we have voted on right now are so important, and it is left for the state houses of assembly now, and Nigerians still have an opportunity to get back to their legislators at the state level to tell them whether they want this or they don't want this, because that is another layer. For us at this level, this process was not done or shrouded in secrecy. It was an open affair. The point I notice is that there are so many Nigerians that truly don't even get to see what the National Assembly is doing, because they've already condemned the National Assembly as an institution that does not do anything good. Yet, when something comes up, they now come back again crying that they don't know what the National Assembly is doing or is up to. So I think the point here is that it is a civic responsibility on every citizen to take interest in what is happening. There are people who will tell you, I don't even watch news. There are people who will tell you, I don't even read newspapers. So if you don't do all of these things, how do you get to understand what is happening?
All right.
So I think this is the point.
Yeah, distinguished Senator Aliu Sabi, that's, of course, thanks a lot for your perspective. We've not even gotten into the substance yet of the amendment, but the process is as important as the procedure. And that's why, I think it's useful for us to still interrogate the process. Again, back to distinguished Senator Ita Enang. The distinguished senator here has indicated that, look, this is part of the legislative agenda of the 8th Assembly. Let's say the 8th Senate. This is what they wanted to do, and they have done it. Some persons have said, listen, there appears to be a mad rush in all of this. That's one leg. Second leg is, how do we then situate the other critical stakeholder interests? Were the senators or the lawmakers acting, again, as I said, on their own? Or is this a party agenda? Is there a party agenda that is being pursued? The APC, which is the governing party at the center, already has, a committee that is working on some of the critical aspects. What was the rush? Why did they not await this to say, okay, let us see what our party would say, and then we kick it? And distinguished senator, you were an advocate of a proper liaison, effective liaison between the executive branch and the, and the National Assembly in order to reduce considerably areas of friction. Again, you also talked about the caucus meeting system. Do we have a sense of how the caucuses have worked in all of this to come up with the amendments that have been passed now by way of bills at the National Assembly before we get to the next crucial stages, where, of course, probably they will meet with some other reactions? Distinguished Senator.
Thank you very much, and thank you for reminding me of the matters I had advocated, and I still advocate. Now, I do not think that the National Assembly had a mad rush on this matter. I think they were very tenuous. The only thing I said was, and my brother, distinguished Senator Sabi Abdullahi, has stated that they thought that those matters were settled. Yes, they may have been settled, but most Nigerians had grown and have come of age to have been consulted, But then they were settled in the minds of some Nigerians. Now, it was good to start the process early. And starting the process early, at midterm, they've had a vote on it, which is very, very commendable. And of course, they've had a vote at a time that is not near to election, because most of the challenge we had the last time were that most of the matters which had to affect the electoral process came in so late that INEC was not able to prepare for those ones. So we still commend them on commend the National Assembly on the being timeous on it. So I don't think there was a mad rush. And taking the experience that we had in our in the 7th Assembly, that it went to the State Houses of Assembly. There were division among the governors. There were division among the State Houses of Assembly. And thank God most of those governors who stopped certain of the processes are now in the Senate. And some of the speakers who stopped most of them are now in the House of Assembly, House of Representatives. Now, there was that frustration. So it was good that they had to start early. Now, on the process of liaison, consultation with the caucuses, the position of the All Progressives Congress, the position of the executive, yes, there was proper liaison at all these levels. And you remember the All Progressives Congress had set up a committee on, and one of the matters was a little bit tempestuous on restructuring. I think that is how the party said, look, let us set up the process. I mean, a committee, I think, headed by El Rufai, I think I'm correct, the Governor El Rufai. They set up that process. That means that the party at that level is involved. The People's Democratic Party also had a say and a process of doing it, and they have been involved. At the level of the executive, there had been the Attorney General was fully in the picture, and strategic officers of the executive were fully in the picture, by process of liaison and constant prompting on each of the stages. Now, but you know, for the executive, you do not interfere in the legislative process at the time of the legislation, except to make input through your representatives or through the leader of the Senate or House of Representatives, or just speak through your liaison in a manner that could be made known to the principal officers and to the legislators themselves. So all this were done. And Nigerians also were consulted at the level of the hearing during the retreat, because state houses of assembly members or speakers were involved at that stage. But I think that what should be done now is Nigeria shouldn't condemn the process at all. Nigeria should now go downstream, meet the process downstream, and at this level of the state houses of assembly say, vote on this, don't vote on this, vote against this or vote for this. So there is still that level that will. And I will urge the governors that please let some questions pass and consult and lead the consultation level between the houses of assembly and the people. Thank God that the National Assembly had separated and segmented them into bills. So let us take each bill as one and as individual, as separate subject matters, and opine on how the House of Assembly should vote. Again, I think that there is something that we started in the House of Representatives that chair the Rules and Business, and we try to do it in the Senate. We try to lay a comprehensive process, a comprehensive procedure for voting at the state level. But I think it did not fully succeed. I think that consultants and persons at this level should be able to let the Houses of Assembly not just bring the matter on the table, lay it, and the Speaker holds the gavel and say, bill number 1, and you say yes or no. There are certain, the thing is very intricate, very, very intricate. I had read the entire report. I had read the entire vote and proceedings of the Senate. I've read the entire vote and proceedings of the House of Representatives. I have come to terms with the fact that some of the issues, if you just vote yes on the entire bill, you'll be making a mistake. So look at each bill. See, like you have, you agree that, look, for instance, there should be established the National Industrial Court. Should it be established? Yes or no? Composition, should it be yes or no? Should this person be a member? Yes or no? So each of those aspects, vote on it. And I would pray that the National Assembly and some advocates, and we could try on the part of the executive, working with the Office of the Attorney General, to make these bills, what has been done, go round in hard copies, on soft copies, on the wide circulation, so that Nigerians will go to each of the sites and read on each of them. Because the way questions were put by the Honorable Speaker and the distinguished President of the Senate, it appeared as if it was just one subject. When you read it, you know it is very intricate. Take, for instance, the matters affecting the legislature. The way the Constitution Amendment, the judiciary, the way the Constitution Amendment affects the judiciary is so deep, down-rooted, and a lot conflicting. I apologize, but I had said I won't get into the substance. But as a lawyer of long-standing, I believe that much of the details that have been touched about the Code of Conduct Tribunal, the Securities Tribunal, the National Industrial Court, the intervention in the National Judicial Council, they are far-reaching, and the judiciary should go on a retreat of its own. The judiciary as a body, the National Judicial Council, should go on a retreat of its own to look at this so that at the level it will be voted at the state, they will have what they want. Right. I'm not advocating that we start the process back again. Right. The National Assembly has done a job and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, please, there's a clarification.
All right.
Yes, I need to make a clarification.
Okay.
With respect to the issue of judiciary, I'm not a lawyer, but I remember vividly one of the points that informed all the input in the judiciary was that this input came from the judiciary itself. In fact, to the extent some people were telling us, since the judiciary came in and said, look, all the things we have proposed to you are things we want, we should please respect them and allow those things to go.
All right.
So I thought I should make this clarification because lawyers, every single lawyer has an idea of how things should be.
Yeah, that's right. The distinguished Senator Aliyu Sabi, thank you very much. Again, this is where probably the devil could be in the details. Yeah, the judiciary may have proposed a set of issues, but then the drafting could be otherwise. All right, so distinguished Senator.
But of course, let's take a look at some of this proposed amendment, at least let's getting down. Votes, also the proceedings are taking their own different turns, and everyone has their own aspect to it. Now, for so many, looking at the introduction of 33 alterations that seem to be so many at a go, and then for some others, some might scale through. Definitely, we'll take a look at how they actually came to be in the first instance. What do you make of the whole process in terms of voting and the proceedings, as well as having 33 alterations at a go?
Well, you have to remember that they've already had a retreat on it, and they've had in-depth look at every single one, and they are all ready to vote. It wasn't just on the day that it was presented to them. Sure. So on that day, it was agreed that, okay, we'll look at everything, come with your comments and vote. The interesting bit was the electronic voting, which really helped to show give an accurate voting system. There's some results that I was wondering what happened. In some votes you have 93 and 1 or 0 abstaining, and yet they had a total of 95. So I'm like, what happened to the other people? Did they get up? Or it's not quite reflective. So when you look through all the votes, one would have expected the total number of persons voting would be reflected in the total number of each vote for each bill. Now, looking at the way they voted the bills, some, like Senator Itayang said, some of the bills are quite intricate, and there are certain details in. For example, if I can give an example, the one that was captioned devolution of power, for example, the title in itself may have scared quite a few people off. And there was itemized areas that they need to move from the exclusive list to the concurrent list. And some of them made sense in the sense that it's just to get all those amendments named devolution of power was, in a way, in my opinion, giving the states an opportunity to create more revenue for itself, as opposed to taking away federal government powers per se. I'll give you a typical example. Railways, establishing rail network. Now, that does not take much away from the federal government in itself. It only enhances and provides opportunity for citizens to move around easier and communicate with their families much readily. And on the downside, on the upside for the state, it gives the state more revenue to provide services for their citizens, for those who are residents and in that particular state. Yet it was voted in a manner that shouldn't have been thrown out. There are issues like that down the line. I'd like to take another one of the assent, presidential assent. For me, the 30 days is good. However, I think the National Assembly is trying to take away the powers of the executive by reducing the extension of the executive powers of the president. Where you say the president must give you the portfolio of a candidate, a nominee for ministerial position. We're running a presidential system. The executive powers are clear. The legislator needs to approve ministers for him, persons that will work with him. He would have the decision to decide where he thinks that person can best serve him and the nation. But where you now ask that he must attach a portfolio before you approve the candidate, then it opens a fresh controversial area.
Namely?
Namely, one, if Mr. X from W State, I'm not going to complicate matter by naming states.
State.
Okay, if Mr. Taiyang, for example, from Akwa Ibom State, is given petroleum ministry and presented at the Senate, and the presiding officer at the time is Senator Bassi. Senator Bassi, for instance, has an issue with Mr. Iang, who Itaiang from his, not Itaiang, Mr. Iang from his state. It is likely that he will never get that portfolio. Secondly, if for any reason a particular person that has been nominated to a particular portfolio is incapacitated and has to leave, the president cannot shift his cabinet or shuffle his cabinet, because cabinet is specific to a particular portfolio. That really is shackling the powers of taking away the powers of the executive.
I just before we go back to Festus Oguche and then Ibadan Network Studios, you recall that during various ministerial confirmation hearings, there was always the question, so look, it would have been a lot easier during the screening process if distinguished senators had a sense of the portfolio that a nominee, would most likely be assigned to, upon confirmation and then upon being sworn in. I think that's perhaps the reason why the senators voted the way they did. But what is not clear, and what should not be the case, that's my personal opinion, by the way, but does the fact of the president or a governor indicating the portfolio to be assigned to a commissioner or ministerial nominee then prevent the president or the governor from otherwise reassigning that same nominee or firing that nominee, as the case may be?
Yes, it does prevent him
does
from...
It
prevents him from taking a... Because once you approve, you're approving that person for that portfolio.
I think the issue is simple. You see, the whole essence of all of this is to say that, look, when people appear before you for confirmation, you are at a loss what kind of questions to ask. The questions you ask, you can only glean it from maybe the CV you read, you ask this question, ask that question. But what people are saying now, and I want to say that honestly, this came from the totality of views that we are receiving anytime we do this ministerial, screening. And I remember, even before now, all the others, assemblies, when ministerial screening issues come on board, these are the same, complaints you keep hearing. Now, the point is, what people are saying is, if somebody is going to health, you'll be able to task him on very fundamental issues that is affecting the health sector. And his response can help to assuage Nigerians to the fact that, yes, this person is ready to serve. And down the line, you have certain things you can also hold him accountable to because he has made certain explanations.
What about the second leg of it? Namely, does the fact of a ministerial, of a nominee being assigned a portfolio now prevent or preclude the president or the governor from otherwise reassigning or firing the individual?
From my own perspective, no.
No. What's the perspective of the provision?
These issues were asked, and it was made very clear that, of course, that particular provision in the Constitution that says that he can assign any other responsibility makes it imperative for him to be able to shift them if he wants to.
Maybe there ought to be a proviso. Yes, provided that this does not prevent the president.
All right, distinguished senators here.
Absolutely.
Well, Kingsley, I know this is getting passionate by the minute. Now, we have reactions from our viewers. Mr. Oguche in the Port Harcourt, as well as Mr. Agility in Ibadan. We'll get back to bringing up your own questions to you as soon as we're back from this break. But that will be after we're done with the tweets from our viewers. Kingsley?
All right, let's begin with Dele Jack Solomon. He tweets, he says, until Nigeria does the needful, the issue of restructuring, constitutional amendment and electoral reforms will continue to be subject of our unity. The need to separate the office of the AGF and Minister of Justice, AGF stands for Attorney General of the Federation, appointment of ANEC chair by judiciary and prescription of CX, that's the State Independent Electoral Commission's key.
All right, from Sani Michael Omakoji, well, the distinguished Senator Gwadabe, you raised this earlier when you started. Although the amendment of the 1999 Constitution is long overdue, but the 8th Senate must be commended for at least taking a move. At this time that we are all yearning for gender mainstreaming, our own lawmakers are against 35% affirmative for women. Why?
Now, Victor Ohioswoma tweets, now some of the amendments are okay, like local government autonomy, but it is sad that devolution of powers to states failed. I hope it can be revisited.
Well, from Festus Akimboyewa is this tweet. Nigeria's 1999 Constitution is clinically dead, and the proposed amendment is an exercise in futility because it will not solve our problems. Only the 1963 Constitution can solve Nigeria's problem of federalism and resource control, and not amended 1999 Constitution.
Obianuju tweets, can the amendment put food on Nigeria's table?
Well,
Jacob, not live by bread.
Jacob Chile says the amendment of the 1999 Constitution should be tailored towards solving the practical problems bedeviling Nigeria.
And Ibrahim Majidadi tweets, now the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria needs to be amended because so far it hasn't achieved reasonable success since 1999. A lot needs to be reviewed.
From Badamasi Adamu is this tweet. It is obvious that the House against the plight of FCT natives, despite sacrificing their ancestral homes for the capital of the country.
Sani Michael Omakoji again says, Senator Ita, you were in the National Assembly before, but now out. If you were still there, what would have been your take on power devolution?
Okay, to Benjamin Hard Drive is this tweet. We, nothing to amend. I mean, a constitution that, that is meant to enrich the leaders. No, we can't support that.
All right, and then we have this one from Oko Ofoboche. It says, the National Assembly vote on state creation and local government isn't the will of the people. The agitation speaks for itself. And our reps are wrong on the Minister of Justice.
Comrade Tomori Abdul has this tweet. Ongoing constitutional amendment for who? By who? It is going to be a wasted effort if care is not taken.
And then we have this from Michael Udo. It says, why is it that you guys up there like favoring yourselves, whereas you claim you are all there, on the people's mandate?
Akin Dada has this tweet. Nonetheless, I appreciate the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
And then Ali Concern said the most painful aspect of this amendment is immunity for legislators. Nigerian people are waiting for a referendum in earnest.
From Tukur Mohammed is this tweet. Honestly, I concur with the National Assembly. They made a proud history since 1999.
Engineer Abdullahi tweets, a referendum ought to be done before any amendment. Is it before or after the amendment ratified? Now, it's unfortunate that the Nigerian Senate is holding us to ransom most times.
From Buka, Sedu says from his street, what is the power of green and red chamber and what is the power of state assembly?
Now, it says Joe Public, that's the Twitter handle here. Senator Enang is contradicting himself on the process, saying Nigerians were consulted at the retreat level. All right, now this is some of the tweets that we have coming in from our viewers. Of course, we still have our guests at Ibadan and the Port Harcourt Network Studios, plus the three senators, one of course who is serving and the others who had served at various times. We'll take a short break. That way we'll return, we'll continue with the conversation.
Yes, we are all guilty of this. We judge people based on ethnic group.
My father only took a look at your picture, not pictures, so and shouted, "Hey, see this tribal mark."
We judge people based on the area they reside.
Samson comes from a place where kidnapping is rampant.
We judge people before we have a chance to know them closely.
Have you gone to Udog place to look for your dog?
Unbelievable.
Stereotypes. Another rib-cracking episode of your #1 television comedy series. Professor John Bull explores and explodes this terrible societal ill. Keep a date with Professor John Bull's series and laugh like never before.
Where you come from, sir? Come from Umeu. Hey! Umeu! What's up? Why the shout? Those people sabi thief goat. Over and out.
Brought to you by Glow.
The largest data network. Glow. Unlimited.
If you just tuned in, the program is Good Morning Nigeria, and we're taking a look at the amendment of the Constitution by the 8th National Assembly. And of course, we have our guest senators here in the Abuja studio, and we also have 2 guests, one in Ibadan and also another in Port Harcourt. Now to Mr. Oguche in Port Harcourt. Yes, you've had a long wait listening in on what the senators here have been taking a look at. Now, this process, the amendment process, for some, I believe it's been a cumbersome process, and they will suggest some other means of making it easier for the people. And also, there were other rafts of issues from members of the National Assembly being self-serving in one way or the other. Wow. You have your own thoughts. You might wish to come in at this point over some of the areas that you've considered while listening on them.
First of all, in one of your tweets, somebody tried to contend with the area of immunity for legislators. I think I want to have that corrected. It is not immunity, all-round immunity as the governor or the president will have, but immunity in the course of their legislative duty. The issue of financial autonomy for the local government areas was raised very elaborately during the 2015 conference organized by Jonathan, and he did not see any it did not make any headway in the State House of Assembly. We expect that will also be the case in this circumstance, in spite of the fact that there's also an amendment to the effect that the state legislatures will have autonomy. There's also the issue of affirmative action, 35 affirmative action for women, which I think is not even a matter for national legislative business, because it's a matter that is one of the mechanisms adopted for the enforcement or for the actualization of the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly as far back as 1999 or thereabout, if I'm not mistaken, and of which Nigeria is signatory. So it is sort of bearing our inadequacies if we now go to the public domain to tell the entire international community that we cannot abide by our international obligations. That is not the proper thing. A lot of countries have gone ahead in adopting that affirmative action. South Africa, countries like Rwanda, countries like Mozambique have gotten to about 30%. Paul Kagame of Rwanda had taken the lead globally, is at 49%. And we are just at the very low ebb, 5%. And it's a very serious thing, because we would not want to showcase ourselves as persons who do not want to obey or accord or act in accordance with our international obligations or do anything that reduce our human rights record. There's also the issue of devolution of power, which was rejected. I will not hold the legislators to ransom for that, as far as I'm concerned, because devolution of power goes beyond mere transfer of legislative lists from the concurrent to the exclusive, from the exclusive to the concurrent, and maybe the creation of a new residual list. It is just very fundamental, and there's no amount of transfer you make to the lists that will change the character of the current constitution as being a unitary federalism. You know, it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's a very fundamental thing. Same also with restructuring, which has been the subject matter of series of discourse in recent times, and which a lot of people have expressed their disappointment. The issue of restructuring and devolution of power goes beyond even this current constitution. And if you want to do anything to that regard, you have to first of all identify what is the quantum of power to be devolved, what should inform the component structure of the entity of the federation in terms of should it be the states as they exist right now, which I think should, because as far as I'm concerned, those states are mere artificial creations of the military through military fiat, decrees and what have you, and did not actually is the product of the people. So the issue of devolution of power and restructuring is something that calls for another process altogether. Call it a constitutional conference, call it a sovereign national conference, and we cannot even at this stage have recourse to what they did at the 2015 conference, because rather than tackle with that issue, the conference rather made recommendations for creation of more states, where we are grappling with states that cannot even pay salary, states that if you withdraw the revenue from oil, they cannot even fill the governor's car. As far as I'm concerned, there are also a lot of issues. For instance, the issue of the justices of the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal taking some decisions in chambers. I don't think that one is very necessary, because it's already provided under the rules of court and in the practice directions which are there, that there are matters that can be taken in chambers. And I think it's also the behooves on members of the judiciary, it behooves of them, particularly at the appellate court, that there are matters that should be taken in chambers, matters relating to motions and all that, that the real courtroom procedure should be left for appeals only. There's also the issue of citizenship and indigenship relating to women. You know, the right to contest for an election, either where you're married to or where you're domiciled, or where. I think that one has already been taken care of, because the issue of citizenship, like the Constitution recognizes only citizenship, and you're a citizen of wherever you are domiciled. In actual practice, it may not work, but I don't think women are having contentions with participating in the electoral process by virtue of that. One very important area, which I think I must hammer on, is the issue of independent candidacy, because we are not actually going in line with certain international obligations. There's a recent judgment of the African Court of Human Rights in Tanzania, in Mitilika, and the Tanzania Civil Society against the Tanzania government, where the court stated emphatically that to insist that a candidate for elections must come under the platform of a political party is an abridgment of his fundamental rights, specifically Article 13 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, which gives me wide leverage to participate in any electoral process, either independently or under the banner of a political party. There are a series of areas that I want to look at in terms of these amendments, proposed amendments, and maybe in the course of discussion we look at them more.
Much, Mr. Oguche. Now let's get to Ibadan, where Mr. Agility is still waiting. I hope you're catching up with some of the areas of discussion now. Initially, you said you were not picking up anything. Hope you're getting more of that now. Now, this amendment for the Constitution is bringing up its different areas of interest, at least across all boards. Now, what we're looking at, as been said now, is that the states, of course, will take a look at the state assemblies and all of other stakeholders. Now, pushing to actually have what is the true representation of the people's interest across all boards is what is key now, even as we move towards next election, which is coming around the corner 2019 now. Mr. Oguche just made mention of electoral laws as well as some other areas that he has raised as a matter of interest. Where do we begin to warehouse some of those areas of concern across the nation from the different interest groups? Where do we begin to warehouse, and how do we begin to get this all in the process to have effective representation in this amendment?
Thank you. Well, I've been able to be with you in the couple of minutes. Initially, I wasn't. Now, if I may, before I answer your question, please, if I can take off from where my life friend from Port Harcourt ended, he talked about the National Assembly trying to make some amendments, and whether those amendments are justified or not. For instance, talking about the judiciary, I think that, like, I agree with him, trying to say that the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court can decide matters in chambers. I mean, what concerns the National Assembly, that should not be a constitutional provision. Now, we have also listed some people along the line condemning the act of the National Assembly. I also stand to say that the amendment which the National Assembly have done now amounts to a barren exercise at the end. It's an exercise in futility. For instance, take the devolution of power, which they have rejected. The feeling now is that the states cannot do anything. Give them more responsibility. Let the federal government have fair responsibility. Nigeria is a federation, not a unitary system of government. And that is why when we are talking about electoral process, what concerns the federal government with election into local government? So that amendment is wrong. Except we are saying Nigeria is a unitary system of government, and we are not. The founding fathers looked at it and said we should be a federation. And that is where we can advance because of the because we are many in terms of ethnic orientations, in terms of religious orientation, in terms of customs and all those things. And it's only a federal system of government that can accommodate that. Now, when we are not bringing local government, we are talking of federating states. Federating states include the state itself and the federal government. And if you look at our constitution, it says so, Section 1, Section 2, Section 3, affirms that this Nigeria is a federation of 36 states. Now, when we bring local governments, because we are now saying the federal should now conduct elections at local government level, then we are talking that Nigeria is not a unitary state. Then again, you amend, you now say money should go directly to the local government. Then you are now saying that Nigeria is not a unitary state. So we now have 774 local government plus Abuja making 750 or something of such, plus 36 states. All of them will now be assembling in Abuja. I don't think that is necessary. Now, talking about the affirmatives for 35% for women or whatever, I also believe that it is also not necessary. The amendment done to the executive that if the president or the governor wants to appoint minister, they should allot office before the National Assembly approves. That is wrong. I heard a district senator there trying to justify that you want to put somebody in the Ministry of Works who knows about works. Then we can go for that to say that the Senate leader, the Senate president, should be a lawyer or a political scientist and not a medical doctor, as Saraki is. No, we can go as that. Now, there is something wrong with our legislative arm of government. The executive is different from the legislative arm. The legislative arm is to make law. Now trying to erode the power of the executive, I don't think that is right. And it's unfortunate that many of them who are there now in the legislative arms have been members of the executive before. It is not right, because the president is elected. He has a constituency all over the country. He is elected, and is supposed to perform within 4 years or 8 years and get him out. Now, to now curb him that he cannot move, every step of the executive is being frustrated. The amendment, I believe, is a barren exercise and it will not stand the test of time. That's my whole contribution.
Mr. Ronti, thank you very much there. Blessing, we have another set of tweets. Let's take those tweets very quickly before we return to our guests. Mariana G. tweets, portfolios should be attached to the positions during screening of ministers. It makes the work easier for the Senate.
Festus Akimboyewa says that National Assembly accepted immunity for legislators and rejected devolution shows the amendment of Nigeria's 1999 constitution is self-serving.
And then we have this from Chidia Chijoke. The amendment of the 1999 constitution is a good development for the progress of our country.
Sixtus Tom sent in the street. If there is anything we need in Nigeria, it is that of the local government autonomy.
And Jolly Lamurele tweets, that's ministerial nominees should be given portfolios before screening.
Mike Anyako has a tweet, the 1999 Constitution has a lot of distortions and imbalances. To amend it is a step in the right direction and sanity in our polity.
And Badamasi Adamu tweets, until the FCT is treated like other states of the Federation, the amendment will be biased and incomplete.
From Shatima Mohammed is the tweet, we need to scrap the 1999 Constitution and go back to the only true Constitution we have ever had, and that is the 1963 Republican Constitution.
All right, those are the third set of tweets that we are taking at this time. We're pressed for time very quickly. Distinguished Senator Ita, of course, we cannot possibly, the space of time that we've had, where we discuss some of the provisions, sorry, some of the clauses that have been amended by way of the bills that have been passed by both chambers of the National Assembly. But the point that's been raised has to do with the issue of immunity for lawmakers. Persons would have thought that it was simple parliamentary practice. I mean, you know it, what we call parliamentary immunity, words uttered on the floor of the chamber or the committee stages in the presidential system. It offers you immunity. Why do we have to reduce this into a clause in the Constitution?
I think this is one area that I, without breaching what I said, that I won't get into the substance, that I disagree with the National Assembly. First, because there is the Legislative Houses Powers and Privileges Act. That act provides for these privileges. And so to elevate it from the level of a privilege to the point of immunity is not it's not good. And of course, this goes to the fact that most of the matters which are there in the Constitution are too detailed. By the time you have the Constitution come out with what has been stated there, it's going to be terribly bulky. There are too many matters which ought to be left. Like somebody has said that many matters which should be left in as rules of practice by the Supreme Court, Court of Appeal, taking matters in chambers. Those are matters which are already contained in the civil procedure, in the rules of court. They should not be elevated to the level of Constitution. And finally, there was a question that was raised that for the judiciary, they were consulted in all the matters. Yes, the court, the National Industrial Court, may have an opinion on what it wants done for it. The Code of Conduct Tribunal may have an opinion on what it does for it. You hear it. Then you bring it into the Constitution. You've not consulted the National Judicial Council. You've not perhaps sought the opinion of the Chief Justice of the Federation. You may not have sought the opinion of the Attorney General of the Federation, because what each court wants may be different from what the entire judicial system is about. So that level, still all the judiciary should have a retreat of its own, but I congratulate the National Assembly on the transparency of the process and the action taken thus far.
I'm just wondering, Senator Ita, thanks a lot, but Senator Ali Osabi, before we come to Senator Gwadabe, the Senate took the step of seeking to revise, obliterate, or otherwise, reenact business laws that will conduce to ease of doing business and therefore aid the growth and development of the country. How would you reconcile that move by the Senate with also the rejection of the shift of some items from the exclusive list to the concurrent, in particular, for instance, railways, which relate to infrastructure? That there have been a number of considerations relating to how you needed to get private and the state and local governments, to become investors in all of this. But if the item remains on the exclusive list, how do you reconcile that apparent tension?
Well, I thank you very much. I think maybe going directly to the issue you've raised, you see, when you have a process, I think a lot of issues will begin to, aggregate towards making that process clearer. That is just what I've seen. Maybe perhaps when it came to the issue of all those things that have to do with devolution of power, there were quite a number of issues that were still contentious. And you see, if perhaps those particular provisions were broken into bills, that will have also now raised the number of bills. And so at the end of the day, you recall that we amended the Railway Act, and we have done some very good legislation there, where by virtue of that legislation, we are saying that even state, private sector, because we have now broken it into regulatory arm, with operational and vis-a-vis standards and quality. So I think the issue you've raised, yes, will not go away just simply because of what we have done. Like you can, in fact, the Senate President is saying that perhaps based on the outcry arising from how this issue was treated, a lot of, Nigerians have raised issues, and the National Assembly will consider looking at this particular issue. But let me also quickly clarify on this issue of affirmative action.
Like 10 seconds.
Yes, the issue is that it is not something that should go into the Constitution, because right now, if you look at the country, by the time you put it in the Constitution, you'll be hamstringing some states. There are states that can have more than that 35%. You are keeping them at 35. There are states that cannot get that 35%. You cannot really do that because you'll be putting a lot of pressure on those particular states. What we said is let it go into the bill.
All right. What should be done differently? We have to go.
Well, I just wanted to just add that one of the tweets had said, I think, Obianuju, how does all this put food on the table? I think that's what the common man really wants to know. This constitutional review, how does it impact on me? First, I would say the Bill 4, 5, and 6. Bill 4 talks about financial autonomy of the state legislature. When the state legislature now have their own autonomy to make finances for themselves, to budget for themselves, and have their direct funding, they'll be more autonomous. 2, Bill 5 talks about distribution pool of account, which means the joint account system should be separated so that the local governments get their funds going straight to them. That way you get more development at the local government level, and the states also can do their own bit. Bill 6 talks about the tenure of local government chairman and wanting them to be democratic. I think right now we have caretakers all over. Now when people are allowed to vote for the people they want, they can easily hold them accountable in that regard, thereby making sure they bring development and boost the economy from the grassroots right up to the top. But I must put a word in to say that, yes, some good things have been done. There are some that really don't have a place in the Constitution, like the judicial matter, like the matter of the women 35% is actually discriminatory against women when you now limit the percentage that they can get by putting it in the Constitution.
All right, Senator Hirat Gwadabe, Chairman Forum of Senators, we'd like to thank you very much for your insight and for coming on the program this morning.
Thank you very much.
I would also like to appreciate the Senior Special Assistant to the President of the National Assembly, Martin Senate, Senator Ita Enai. It was a great delight having you. Also, the Chairman Senate Committee on Media and Public Affairs, Senator Sabi Aliyu Abdullahi. Thank you very much. It was a great time having you on the program. And to our guest right there in Port Harcourt, Mr. Festus Oguche, constitutional lawyer, touch time short, but I would like to appreciate you for your comments as well as your contribution as well on the program this morning.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Political scientist and journalist, Mr. Ronti Ajeleti, thank you very much. You joined us from our Ibadan studio. It was a great delight having you on the program as well. Okay, to our companion segment, Kingsley.
All right,
we have sports.
Blessing, thank you very much, of course, from what we can glean from the discussion so far, what's still out there in the public domain. The matter is just beginning.
Exactly.
All right, let's move on now to sports and check out what's happening in the local league as well as 2017 Emirates Cup. Here's our sports desk.